Welcome to the September 9th meeting of the Franklin Board of Education. Could I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Alexandrovich.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mr. Sprague.
Here.
Mr. Gamble.
Here.
We are all present.
Thank you. This meeting has been properly posted. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Item 3, agenda approval. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Linda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Claude. And voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Passes unanimously. Item 4 is community comment period. Participants under this agenda item must limit their statements to 3 minutes with a maximum of 15 minutes for any and all comments. If the community comment is related to an agenda item, the board may respond to that comment either at the end of the community comment session or during the discussion of that agenda item. The board may not discuss comment or question that does not relate to an agenda item, per Board Policy Administrative Rule 8300. Is there anyone that would like to speak during the community comments period? Yes, please state your name and address.
My name is Mary Yank, address 5731 West Cascade Drive. So I was at the last board meeting, and I was just wondering if there might be some thought given to coming up with some kind of policy or protocol if you have to have a similar voting system to replace the president. It seemed like everybody knew that she was going to be leaving because there were presents and speeches and everything, but the whole process just seemed kind of haphazard, and poor Mrs. Evans didn't know if she needed to vote, should vote, could vote, and Mr. Alexandrovich, finally said she could, and Mrs. Witkowski was in, then she was out, then she was in, and I just can't imagine. It seemed kind of like everyone was just kind of flying by the seat of their pants as far as how that all unfolded. So I don't know if there could be some thought given to more of a process if that ever has to happen again. It just, like I said, seemed kind of haphazard. And then I don't know if the voting process with all the, secret ballots, I mean, we kind of cracked that code after the first, go around, and so I don't know if it has to be secret ballots or if everyone can just kind of stand by who they vote for. But again, it just struck me kind of like there should be a better way to have gone about that. So just some food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your first community comment. How'd it go?
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to comment? Please step forward and state your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Tamara Grobschmidt. I'm 8320 River Terrace Drive. This is in regards to the Teaching and Learning 2020 Summer School Report, and I understand it's going to be presented today. I really would like to see an expansion at the Franklin Public Schools of summer school. So many students learn through these enrichment opportunities and learn what they'd like to do professionally down the road. It's through some of these experiences. Right now at the high school, just having it being recovery is not enough. We need to be able to offer a lot more. I understand also that the middle school hasn't been able to offer the same amount of enrichment. I think they've reduced a number of their courses due to this environment that we're in. And so in order to make up for that, I think that we really should have some more summer school for the middle school level. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Would anyone else like to comment? Yes. Step forward, please, and state your name and address.
Angela Beer, 9025 South Dearbrook Court.
First, I wanted to say thank you for some excellent communication that we've gotten from the district in recent days. I was especially excited to see the joint statement from the health department and the district. That went a long way to reassuring me as a health professional that the two entities really are working hand in hand throughout this process. So I felt a great deal of reassurance by that, and I also want to give a shout out to Chad Kafka, whose communications have been excellent, and I also think that Jordan Hines' communications that he's been doing via streaming have been very good as well, and I've commended them to people. I think one thing that has been helpful about those communications is that they directly address questions that parents have been presenting. So for example, there's the FAQ sections in the district communications. Mr. Hines' presentation was directly responding to emails that he received. I know that you all have been bombarded by emails after the last meeting in regards to board use of social media, and I would just like you to consider adopting a similar communication strategy whereby you openly and publicly discuss the issues that have been brought to the public's attention in a board meeting, specifically as board use of social media and its alignment with district policies, practices, and values is concerned. I understand that would take the addition of a specific agenda item. I would love to see that either added to the agenda in advance, or I would love to see during the approval of the agenda process that be added by one of the board members. Specifically, just to say, this is something that we want to clarify how the board should behave. We want to clarify what's acceptable going forward so that we can all see in a public setting how you all have grappled with that challenge to district policies, procedures, and values. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Would anyone else like to comment? No one else wants to comment? I will close community comments period. Item 5, school board announcements. Do we have any announcements by school board members?
Mr. Gamble?
Yes.
You missed the consent agenda.
Thank you for correcting me. Okay, so backing up to item 3, approval of the
5A.
5A.
Yes.
Mine doesn't have that. So let me go to this one. Okay. Okay, 5A, approval of the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sprague, second by Linda. And voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes unanimously. And, okay, that threw me off there. So 5B, meeting minutes would be on board docs, personnel update.
That's part of the consent agenda.
Thank you. Now we get to item 6 with school board announcements. Any announcements by school board members? No announcements by school board members. Item 7, we'll have a regular board meeting on Wednesday, September 23rd, here in the ECC at 6 p.m. A regular board meeting on Wednesday, October 14th, also here at the ECC at 6 p.m. Item 8, administrator update.
First of all, thank you all for coming this evening. It's very nice to see you. We are delighted to have started school. Last week, we did a slow start to school, which was really well received by our students and our staff and some of our parents as well. The feedback we received was it was a really great opportunity for everyone to just get comfortable after being away from school for 6 months. So that went very, very well last week. The last 2 days of school have also gone very well despite the weather. Having an indoor recess day on the first day of school when you're in a structured setting again after a long time was a bit of a challenge for the children, but they've done very, very well. It's really quite amazing to see the children back in school and the way that they have acclimated to the things we're asking them to do. In particular, children are wearing masks without any kind of issue or problem. They almost completely forgotten most times that they're on. So we're really pleased with what we've seen last week and the last couple of days of school. I will let you know that we're monitoring very closely who is not feeling well and any cases of COVID. Right now, it's an extremely low number. Next week, I'll be providing the actual data to our staff and to families regarding the rate in which our absences are occurring with our students, our staff, and those individuals who do have COVID. So that information will be provided every week to both our staff and our families. At the start of school, we also spent a great deal of time, in addition to helping our children understand all of our safety protocols related to COVID. We have done some of our evacuation drills, and all of our staff has participated again in the active shooter training. So at no time are we ever unprepared, even given these circumstances, with regard to protecting the children and keeping them safe at school. One of the things that we heard about most recently that's rather interesting, and you've probably read this if you've seen the family newsletter, is that the federal government is now allowing our students and our children, actually, in the city of Franklin to receive free lunches. And this program will continue through December, or as the federal government says, till the money runs out. So we are working very hard to be prepared for that, to obtain as much information as we can from our families and community members and have that available. And then finally, this evening you're going to hear more about our district coherence plan. Our coherence plan is extremely important to us as a district in ensuring that the achievement of our students continues to move forward. And Dr. Cohn this evening will be sharing with you the major strategies of that plan and how we will be working very hard this year to ensure achievement of our students. So again, we're just super happy that we're here and the kids are here, and we're also very optimistic about staying here. So thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, item 9, reports and presentations. Dr. Cohn with his coherence plan report.
Good evening, everybody. The full bulk of the report is in board docs, and as you may recall, I provided a similar report both last fall and then again this past summer. The bulk of the information in the report is reflected both in those previous reports, so a lot of it has been replicated because, frankly, there just haven't been changes from where we were last fall to now, and then again this past summer. I did want to spend a little bit of time walking you through some of the changes that I highlighted in the report as being new information or updated information for this school year. And so I'd like to start on page 6 with a little bit of discussion around the annual district scorecard. So just to refresh your memory, we have a 3-year coherence plan. This is the 3rd and final year of the current iteration of the coherence plan, and as we move into this school year, we're putting in place a process to engage in a 3-year refresh of that coherence plan, again, to reconfirm some of the things we're already doing and perhaps identify some other areas that we might start to explore and move into as we work towards our goal of achieving our mission and vision as a district. The annual scorecard is created every year and highlights the specific core strategies that we're going to be engaging in during this academic year to move us towards those 3-year goals and strategies within the coherence plan. And so I just wanted to walk you through some of the core strategies we're going to be engaging in this year around a better place to learn, a better place to work, and part of a better community. And then as I get to the end of the report, if you have questions about those strategies, myself and my colleagues can go into a little more detail if you need it around those pieces. So starting with Better Place to Learn, if you recall the presentations that we've had from our principals here over the last couple of years, a number of these areas should be very familiar to you. And really it starts with number 3, which is in this environment where we have both face-to-face instruction happening and virtual instruction, we want to really make sure that we're monitoring the fidelity of that instructional program and supporting the effectiveness of the program regardless of the modality, right? Whether it's face-to-face or whether it's virtual, we want to make sure that our students are achieving and growing and that we're hitting those benchmarks. And so we're working closely with our principals this year to identify how they're going to monitor both of those programs and make sure that they're both highly effective. And so we're having some conversation with them about what that'll look like and how they're going to move that work forward. Additionally, we continue our work around social emotional learning, right? We have a multi-year social emotional learning plan. And last year, we introduced our staff and our students to this concept of the 3 signature practices. So this idea of welcoming inclusion activities and inclusive greetings, optimistic closure, and then highly effective strategies throughout the day that incorporate social emotional learning competencies and needs. So we're going to be expanding on those, continuing and expanding and continuing to build our capacity around those pieces. And then also, especially at the start of the year, it was really important that we put some focused and structured lessons in place around the social and emotional learning competencies that we introduced staff and students to last year to help students with that transition back to school and address maybe some of the anxiety or some of the needs that students have as we work them back into this space. And so those will be ongoing throughout the month of September, and we'll continue to provide and deliver those to our students. Finally, within that Better Place to Learn lane, we're continuing our important work around equity. And certainly we've had multiple conversations throughout the summer around that work and where we are. We'll continue to engage in development, right? We talked about the 4 cornerstones of the ICS program around equity, right? We have a multi-year equity plan. And so we got through 3 of the modules with our staff last year. We're going to be moving into module 4 this year, which focuses on the equity research. And then we're going to talk about, draft, and develop a set of equity non-negotiables this year that we'll utilize to influence future policy decisions, future financial decisions, future programming decisions. And so that's important work, and it's work that we'll engage in methodically in order to make sure that we're doing that the best way possible as we make forward momentum and progress around that work. And then we're going to continue to deepen our learning around those modules from last year that the board engaged with and that we engaged with our staff in to make sure that we're continuing momentum around that learning. And so it's an important year for us as we continue to do that work. In the Better Place to Work lane, we're also building on some things that we had started last year and that we're continuing. One is we're going to continue, our leaders will continue to engage in rounding conversations with our staff, both within the operations departments and within our teaching staff. And the goal of that is to have focused conversations with our staff to check in, it kind of talk through how things are going, where we might be able to provide some recognition within the building. And then we utilize that information to identify themes that we can use to improve and work in our buildings as we work to achieve a high level of staff engagement. And then finally, our buildings will be doing specific planning relating to work that they've done with their staff and will continue to do with their staff in terms of building engagement. So we certainly on an annual basis have administered the staff engagement survey that's given us some information, and then that paired with conversations we've had with our staff, we've identified some areas of support and growth, and we're continuing to work on those pieces and will throughout the year. And then finally, on the Better Community side, last year you heard me reference the fact that we had used Qualtrics, which I'll talk about a little more in a little bit, to build some surveys that we were using to gather customer satisfaction data and other metrics related to our operational departments. And so that information, we've just started to build a base of that information. We'll continue with that surveying throughout this year and again, build that base of information in terms of how people are engaging with our operations departments and what that means. And then as we build some trends over time, we're going to leverage that information with our departmental improvement teams to set some goals and some actionable strategies and action planning that they'll engage in to work towards improvement within those departments. So we'll continue to build on that and engage in that work throughout this year. And then finally, as you know, we have a communications plan. Mr. Kafka updated you last year on where we were at. We'll continue to do that work now more than ever, right? It's important that we're transparent about our communication and that we're providing the right information to our community. And so we're going to continue to build there. So those are some of the core strategies that will kind of build the bulk of our work and the bulk of our professional development throughout the year in terms of where we're going as a district. This year, unlike years previous, our principals in the past had built a scorecard, right, that you had seen on some poster board in here, and they would present that to you. This year, we're all aligning back to the annual scorecard, and the principals will be working with their improvement teams to develop action plans that are very specific to how they're going to execute this work in their building. We felt like that was an important step for us to get more concrete in the week by week of what that's going to look like and where we're going around this work in order to operationalize it, and also for us to identify specific measures we're going to be using to benchmark that work along the way to know that we're making progress and then pivot if we need to. And so that's a little bit different than it was years previous, but still aligns back to the work and lives in the spirit of the work that we were doing. The last thing I'd point out around the annual scorecard, we've used 3 words repeatedly with our team over the course of the summer as we move into this year, and that's that the improvement work that we engage in has to be authentic, it has to be flexible, and it has to be responsive. We want to make sure that any improvement work we're engaging in feels real and feels like it's going to have a positive impact on our students and our community. And so we want to make sure that it's the right work at the right time and that it's having that authentic feel as we're doing that work. We have to be both flexible and responsive given the current reality, right? And so we're going to be highly flexible and adaptive as we need to. And as new information and data comes in, we'll be responsive to that data and we'll make the changes that we need to make. And so we've reiterated those 3 terms with our team, and we ask them to keep those things in mind as they're working with their staff and their improvement teams throughout the year. The last section of the report that I wanted to spend a little bit of time on is page 8, and that is the introduction of some new data systems. We have a number of processes related to improvement that we're continuing to get better and better at here as we move into year 3, but there were certainly some areas from a data perspective that we needed to address and support. As I reference in here, in the past, the work that we had done, particularly around things like student data, was kind of scattered across multiple systems within the district. We had user-created spreadsheets, we had vendor systems, we had our own student information system where there was some information, but it wasn't all housed there. And so there was a need to start to pull that information together into one database, one space that we could really quickly access and secure information around student achievement that we're using to kind of move forward in our planning and our work. And so there were a couple of systems that help us do that and get it into those unique places based on the needs. So Qualtrics is a system that we've utilized really for our community surveying, and it's really both a surveying and a data analytics tool. It's a space where we can upload information that we need to analyze, and it's really a district level system. So that system we utilize at the district level for planning, for identifying information, for monitoring dashboards, those kinds of things. EDIS is really a teacher and staff system that houses student information and student data, but it's individual student and classroom student data. So whereas Qualtrics is more of a 10,000-foot view of the system and the kind of data that really impacts the entire school district, EDIS focuses in on those individual students in those individual classrooms so that teachers can get a sense of where their students are academically as various assessments come in throughout the year, and then they're able to work on behalf of students to kind of support and adjust to meet the needs of learners. Both of these systems, I would say, in the last year have really revolutionized the way in which we're approaching data. I think it's made data much more accessible to not just our staff, but our principals and our other leaders. We're looking at things in new ways. And you've heard me talk before about just something as simple as response rate on our surveys, right? The Community Pride survey 2 years ago, when we only had a couple of hundred respondents, right? And then the first time we administered the Community Pride survey, we had nearly 1,000 respondents. So as we start to push these surveys forward, right, we're getting really good response rates. It's just a better method for us than using Google Forms or some other system that we've used in the past. So certainly more to come here over the coming months, right? We haven't figured out the format by which we're going to provide principal updates to you. We had talked about potentially the liaisons doing that. We had talked about either replicating what we've done in the past or what that could look like. And so we'll continue to work with you to figure out the best way to provide those updates, because it's important to us that you hear from the principals directly about what's happening at the building level and how they're operationalizing this work. I will tell you they're in the midst of their action planning right now, meeting with their improvement teams. The first kind of final version of their initial action plans will be provided to us on September 17th. We'll provide some additional feedback, and then we'll keep working as we start to move into the end of September and into October. And then we'll provide those updates throughout the year. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions you have about our process for the year or on anything that I had referenced.
You said that the social emotional learning was a multi-year plan. What year are we in, and what is the endpoint in that?
Yeah, good question. So we've moved into year 2 of a 3-year mapped out plan around social and emotional learning. So last year, year 1, is where we started to introduce that concept of social and emotional competencies and the 3 signature practices. We brought on the mental health clinic. That was all part of year 1 of that plan. Now we're moving into year 2, which is more focused on the kind of the academic side, right, and how we're integrating social emotional learning into our academics. And so those are things that we're going to continue to work on this year.
So that plan is beyond the current coherence plan.
Correct.
Also, does the EDIS system, does it go back to like the teacher grade book? Does it pull that kind of information together?
Yeah, it certainly pulls grade information. It can pull IEP information. It pulls student assessment information. All of that can be kind of housed in that location. And then teachers only have access to the information for their specific students in that system. So in year 1, last year, we introduced that system primarily to our collaborative teams that are working on behalf of students to pull in student information there. And then we've opened it up to teaching staff this year. But given the kind of multitude of things we're asking staff to do, we've said that anyone who wants to start to access that system this year, we've provided support for, and they're able to do that. But as things start to ease up for us in terms of start of year, we'll start to think about how we can best onboard all staff into that system. So we started small, and we're gradually onboarding more and more staff into that system.
And what does the care and feeding of that system involve? I mean, that data has to get there, somebody has to manage it.
Yeah, so Josh Borzik in my office is a staff member who's been vital to us being able to do some of that work. The systems really are automated in a lot of ways now. They talk to PowerSchool, they talk to NWEA MAP, for example. So as students complete the MAP assessment, within 48 hours, that vendor pushes that information into the system, so we don't have to do that. But Josh has been instrumental in making sure that it's organized for us in that space.
And what % of teachers now have access to it?
All teachers have access to the system, but not everyone is using it yet. So it's available to them, and we're starting to gather data on start of year in terms of how many people are regularly accessing the system, and then we're going to continue to bring more and more people on as we go. But everyone has access to the system as of this year.
And they all are trained to use it, or?
We've provided supplemental training resources right now for people who are interested in using it, and we'll provide more formal training for everyone as we kind of move away from some of these other things that are just time sensitive right now as we start the year. As we move into the school year and we have more time, we'll provide full development for our staff around it.
So you're expecting full adoption of the system by all teachers then?
I would say start of next year for sure, everyone should be in the system and utilizing it.
I'm assuming there are annual licensing fees for this and Qualtrics?
There are, yep. So
How much do they cost?
yeah, we pay $9 a student for EDIS, and we paid, I believe, is just under $20,000 for Qualtrics.
On an annual basis?
Correct.
I can add a little color to the EDIS system. I know that I was talking with the Countrydale, Mr. Van Sistine last year, and he had my daughter's information on the system, and it was nice to have a dashboard in front of him, because we were asking him questions that he wouldn't necessarily know because he wasn't in the classroom with her. And it was nice to be able to have a conversation where the teacher or that individual had the information right in front of him. And I think it makes it a lot easier logistically for these teachers to get information to the people that need the information, the parents and all the other stakeholders.
Just one final question. You talked about using data more because you want to be authentic, flexible, and what is your cycle time you're expecting to be looking at data and coming back?
Yeah, so we always operate within short cycles of 45 and 90 days. That's the goal. So we get different assessment data at different points, right? We survey at different points. So anytime new information comes in, we're looking at it. At the same time, those formal cycles are every 90 to 45 days, depending. So this first cycle is 90 days, and then it's 45-day cycles in the winter and spring.
Thank you.
I have a question. You talk about the refresh that's going to take place regarding the coherence plan. What is that going to look like, and what are your plans for that?
Yeah, certainly we'll provide more details as we get a little bit closer. We're still in the planning phases, but we know that we're going to involve a diverse stakeholder group, again, in that work. And we've contracted an outside facilitator through Studer, so it's a group that we've been partnered with for a couple years now. That coach, Melissa Matarazzo, will be providing and facilitating the structure for that for us. And then we envision it really being a review of where we've been the past 3 years. So what have we achieved? What have we built on? What have we done well? Where are there some opportunities for us to grow as we think to the future? And then it'll be a reconfirmation of those things that we want to continue with, and an opportunity for us to look at, you know what, maybe there's some strategies here that would help us that we're not currently engaged in that we want to move forward. So it just gives us a fresh look at everything that we're doing from an improvement standpoint and lets us make some changes.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Cohn.
Thank you.
Item B is our summer school report from Dr. Reuter.
Hello, everyone. As we think about a year ago, I shared this report with you as it's state mandated to give a comprehensive report of our summer school programming and then forecast for the following year as to where we want to go with summer school. A year ago, I shared with you that our intent was to expand the summer school offerings and build enrichment opportunities at all levels for kids and offer first-time credit at the high school. March 13th and beyond imposed some restrictions to that, and we had to take our intended plan that we had been working on through the fall of last year and into the winter, and we're ready to launch, and really step back and first identify if we wanted to offer summer school in Franklin, if there was a need, if there was a want from the community, and then how would we operationalize that, knowing we came off of a end of school year in a virtual environment that had some successes, but also had a lot of areas to grow and improve on, and in a short time, redesign our programming and think about what was optimal on what we wanted to offer for summer school versus what we could offer given the restrictions due to COVID and the state shutdown. So the first thing we wanted to find out is what did our community want? As you can reference on page 2 of the report, we sent out via Qualtrics a survey to all Franklin parents in the Franklin Public Schools, and we had a response rate of 1,231 responses to the questions laid out as to whether they'd be interested in having their child participate in a virtual summer school program, and if so, we asked them to rank the subject areas as areas of interest. As you can see, that response came back at 49% of that 1231 sample saying no, they were not interested, and 51% of that sample said they were interested. As stewards of this community, we decided to move forward with a summer school program in a virtual setting that we knew would have limitations and wouldn't necessarily meet the vision that we had set forth the previous, a year ago, as to how we wanted to offer programming at each level, but we still wanted to offer that opportunity in a virtual environment. So with that, we were going to move forward with a high school program as long as we had staffing to execute that program that would offer first-time credit in a multitude of areas, as well as offer some enrichment opportunities like AP Summer Academy to help students prepare to take AP courses, an investigations course in ACT writing and AP writing to help kids refine writing skills through the summer as they engaged in those higher level courses, as well as an ACT boot camp. And then we wanted to work on developing micro internship courses to help our kids get out in the community and build upon and understand how learning is not just constricted to the walls of Franklin, so that as they work through their academic career path, they're able to build on health sciences, buildings, trades, business, engineering, and manufacturing. With COVID restrictions, none of those could move forward, right? Those were pieces that we decided to move to credit recovery after we found no interest from our existing staff to teach any of those courses that we could still offer through a virtual environment. However, we did want to ensure credit recovery courses for students that may have fallen behind during last year, whether it be first semester or second semester, so that they'd be on track for graduation and full credits during their course load at Franklin High School. At the middle school, we're going to offer over 15 enrichment courses. About half of those, 2/3 of those courses we decided not to run because they involved being on site in our building and using spaces at the middle school, the manufacturing lab, and those places that we just could not use anymore. The gymnasium, there was other courses that medical detectives, a lot of hands-on courses that we just felt were not applicable at a high level in a virtual environment. So our courses were limited to math enrichment, and reading and writing enrichment at the middle school, as well as Spanish. At the elementary school, we've always had a enrichment program, but we've also had remediation. As you know, I shared a year ago that we did a statistical analysis of spring to fall map data of students that had been in our remediation programs for over 3 years, and saw that less than 3% of students made any positive gains. So we felt that moving forward with a completely elementary enrichment program would get kids curious about learning, have a summer opportunity, and allow them the opportunity to work with, see their friends, meet new teachers, and engage in some creative thinking. So we looked at our current course load we were going to offer, and again, we had restrictions to some of those courses that related to outdoor activities on site, and we identified the classes really built around literacy and math that we could offer in a virtual environment. From there, Ms. Ellihausen and I surveyed staff to find interest, because we can have great ideas on paper and want to offer everything, but if we don't have certified staff to teach that, we can't. The biggest barrier posed at the high school, and we were able to recruit some teachers for the credit recovery courses outlined, as well as we contracted with Wisconsin eSchool Network to offer a virtual Phi-Ed program in the summer, as we had no takers to teach Phi-Ed from our internal staff. This way, that allowed for credit recovery, as well as it allowed for students entering the Inroads program as freshmen who have a heavy course load. They could knock their Phi-Ed credit out of the way. Though it's not an ideal program, it served the need at the time. From there, once we were able to staff, as you can see, staffing was quite lower as our student enrollment was lower given the restrictions of COVID. We were able to run a summer school program for our students in 1st through 8th grade during the month of July, and our high school students in credit recovery ran during our normal summer school time from the end of June through July. The data is there to show you the number of students that took our high school courses, and 93% of the students enrolled in credit recovery did earn credit and passed, and were able to recover credits that they may have lost in the first semester of the past academic year or the second semester of our past academic year. And I also shared with you a snapshot of what a typical student day looked like in that virtual environment, both at the middle and high school level. We learned a lot from running a virtual summer school to inform some of the work that we're doing right now for our students that are in the virtual environment. We were able to understand how we can replicate some things in a virtual environment that happen in a classroom, and those things that we have limitations on. So we were able to talk with some of our teachers at various levels to help us inform. This is also the way that we structured our virtual summer school, aligned with DPI's expectations, because we'll still be most likely audited like we are for summer school for compensation reimbursement. So we wanted to adhere to the guidelines for minutes and the allocation of what a credited class looked like, as well as an enrichment class for that student count. So the summer school program did not flourish the way we had intended, but I don't think anything right now is the way we intended given what occurred last spring. We do intend to revisit our vision of enrichment summer school at all grade levels. One of the barriers that moving forward is that staffing piece, specifically at the high school, and finding highly qualified people to to teach first-time credit classes, as well as finding people that are willing to engage in some of those enrichment courses. We would like to offer a freshman transition course in the future, similar to the middle school transition course we've had in the past. So that is 8th graders coming to Franklin High School. They can spend a few days to better understand some of those nuances of being a new student in high school, and they can orientate so that they're ready right when we come back to school. So with that, I wanted to summarize some of the why behind this that may not have stood out completely in the report, as well as address community comment this evening, and then open it up to any questions you have.
Questions from the board?
I guess generally, I know you didn't give the comparable numbers because you said they weren't comparable, but were they a lot less than?
Yes, our enrollment was down at the elementary and middle level. Middle school, historically, we actually offered more this year virtually, enrichment-wise, than we had ever in the middle school setting, but we reconfigured to the 6-8 and 1-5, whereas in the past it was a 1-8 program, and the enrollment got clumped together. We also put a cap on number of students in the virtual environment, not knowing what it would entail, right? It was new for everyone, the teachers included. I've played the role of quasi-summer school principal throughout the summer, and had fielded many phone calls of praise of you made something happen, specifically at the elementary level that was difficult, at least gave our kids an option. We did no formal surveying because our intent is not to run a virtual summer school in the future, it's to run an actual summer school. If we were stuck in a similar situation and wanted to move forward with a virtual summer school, we would get some, again, survey parents, probably a more extensive survey now to ask for feedback of what they'd like their children to engage in. And again, then it relates, we had some great ideas on paper, but if we don't have the people to do it, we don't have contracted people in the summer, it's hard to run those options.
Thank you.
And I would add that those individuals need to be properly licensed, so you can't just choose anyone to
Right.
teach the courses, so.
If we're offering a personal finance course at the high school to gain first-time credit and graduation credit for personal finance, I don't hold a business degree and teaching license, I couldn't teach that.
So it can't be a banker teaching
You
it?
have to have a teaching license.
Okay.
You could be a guest speaker if you're a banker.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Roeder.
Thank you.
Item 9. That's right, I can't go to that one. That one's on this front. Item 10, school board liaison reports. First item is personnel and policy number 1345, naming school district facilities. Ms. Larson?
Yes, thank you. Policy 1345, naming school district facilities, comes before you just because of its age. After review, Dr. Miller and Mr. Milzer both recommend that there are not any changes needed to this policy.
So I'll be looking for a motion to reconfirm policy 1345.
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
And Mr. Alexandrowitz. And voice vote?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Passes unanimously. Second item is personnel and policy, policy number 6720, student teachers, interns, and fieldwork placement.
Yes,
Larson.
thank you. This policy comes before you because of its age, and with the revisions to this policy, it will help build relationships with our neighboring colleges and universities where we get our students from. Do all the board members understand what a fieldwork position is, a student teaching position, or an internship position? Would anyone like that explained?
The fieldwork placement, please.
A fieldwork student is someone who's at the beginning of their college career in the field of education, where they simply are in a classroom and they're observing a teacher, a certified teacher, practicing their profession.
And what are the other two?
A student teacher would be someone who's teaching under the supervision of a certified teacher already. So as you spend more time in your student teaching position, you are honing your skills under the supervision of a classroom teacher who's there with you. And then slowly, by the end of that term, you've taken over for that teacher. The teacher still remains with you to mentor you, but you're finally given the charge of the entire class and all the planning for the curriculum.
It's a program requirement for licensure,
Yes.
and then the interns, they get compensated.
An intern gets compensation, about 50%. They spend 50% of their time alone and 50% of their day with that mentor teacher, and they do receive compensation, which is cleared with their university or college.
And how many people are involved with this typically in Franklin every year?
This year we have, I believe, 9 or, I can't tell off the top of my head, 9 or 11 student teachers between student service personnel and classroom teachers.
Is that a normal amount? Is that a different than usual years?
I would think historically our numbers have dwindled as there's less people going into the teaching profession. However, we do get a lot of reach outs early on in this region as people want to student teach in Franklin. We currently have 2 student teachers that are former students as well right now teaching in Franklin.
Do you monitor that program, Chris, or who does?
Yeah, so the revision in the policy, and if you look at the rules, Ms. Ellihausen and I have worked the last year on this in the rules and working with our principal team. Right now it runs through my office with coordination with HR. So an example of how this plays out this summer, universities reach out to our office and say that they're interested, or they reach out to HR and they're redirected to teaching and learning. That we have a student that wants to student teach in 4th grade or at the elementary level. Here's their credentials, and then we redirect the university to have their student apply via WeCan, like a regular teacher would, so they have the experience of filling out an application. Prior to that, Ms. Ellihausen sent out, and myself sent out an interest form to our teaching staff to see who would be interested this fall to house or have a field placement or student teacher within their classroom, given the capacity and what we ask them to do on every day. And then from there, we vet that list based on, evaluation scores, student data to see who's highly effective in class, and then we identify once a student teacher applies. For instance, we have a student teacher at one of our elementaries, and the principal that we had identified a possible cooperating teacher. The principal and I ran a formal interview this summer via Google Meet and walked them through about a series of 8 questions because we wanted to replicate not only the in-school practice, but this is what's going to happen when you apply for a job. From there, then, we contacted the cooperating teacher that we had identified, and that teacher was interested, and we made that connection between the student teacher to be the cooperating teacher, which is one of our classroom teachers, and the principal made that connection. They talked through it. The supervisor then of the university, in this case UWGB, we gave clearance and said, this is what's going to happen. This is the student teaching placement. This is the length. They were okay with that, and now that student teacher is working with that teacher in that classroom for the first semester, or first 9 weeks of this school year. The cooperating teacher then, Ms. Ellihausen and I worked through possible options given the restrictions of COVID and visitors. The student teacher's cooperating teacher will come on site twice with clearance, a series of things they have to do prior to be in the school setting, to observe the teacher's practice, interview the student teacher and the cooperating teacher, or they can do a video recording as long as the families and students give consent to be on video. So that's kind of the process, and then the student teacher's done with their placement here. Most likely a letter of recommendation comes from the classroom teacher as well as the principal in that building, who may help with coaching or provide feedback as well to that student teacher, and then they move on to their next placement.
It's really important that this process be very solid for us. This is a reputation of Franklin and how we handle our student teachers, our field work, right? And so we want this to be the best experience for them, because ultimately this is also our pipeline for employment, right?
No, I was curious about
Yeah.
what role the teacher had in evaluating the student teacher, but you've explained it, so that's good.
And to Valley's point, we've hired in this last year, I think 3 to 4 student teachers from the previous year. So again, that the quality of the program and how we've laid out the process is important because we've seen them teach. Principals have said, I've been in there, it's better than any other candidate because I've actually seen them work with kids.
And for Mr. Sprague's question, over time, this is where we would strengthen certain relationships with the colleges so that we know those colleges produce really strong student teachers, which for us could become employees, so that we can push in a little bit on making sure student teachers from those universities head our way.
We had UW Oshkosh's clinical supervisor and UW Milwaukee's clinical supervisor reached out to me this summer and said they're appreciative. We showed them the process because they had questions as this was new, and usually it's, hey, can I have a couple kids, student teacher? Sure, and that's the process in most districts. And they said they were glad to see the depth of this, as well as the pieces of you have to apply and you have to go through those pieces, because you can be just placed somewhere and do the job, but then it's the real world of I have to apply, I have to have my letters of recommendation and those pieces in place.
So that's your relationship building with
Yep.
those individuals.
Yep.
So you can say no to some placement.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And if you look in the flow chart, there is, based on that interview process, letters of recommendation, We want to open our doors to the future teachers and different personnel that fall into this process, but at the same time, we have kids in front of us 180 days, and we want that to be a quality experience, so we have that right.
Are there usually enough spaces or teachers interested in entertaining the student teachers?
Yeah, I would say so. We casted our net and have a large group that was interested, and then it just becomes specifically at the secondary level, the nuances of licensure. And, you know, I have a psychology degree. Well, you have to be with a teacher who teaches psychology and has that certification, or, you know, different science degrees. So then it sometimes limits, this is the only person. And if the teacher is saying, I can't manage that on top of other things that are going on, then we have to decline those positions. But that's primarily at the secondary level.
I think it says a lot about our staff that they're interested in doing this because it is more work than one would imagine.
That's what I was.
Yeah, particularly more recently with the new licensure requirements for new teachers. It's called EdTPA, I believe.
Yep.
It's very rigorous, and our staff really do it because they want to contribute to this profession. There really isn't much other reason to do it. They don't get paid. They merely want to contribute to this profession and help us find the best teachers we can find. So,
That would be critical to developing the pipeline, so.
No other questions? Move on.
Looking for a motion on that, Mr.
Oh, that's right.
Gamble.
Changes, yeah.
Yes. So we're looking for a motion to approve revised policy 6720 as presented.
So move.
Mr. Lewis, a second?
Second.
Mr. Alexandrovich. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Passes unanimously. And Part C, Board Liaison Reports.
So, my liaison school this year is Southwood Glen. I talked with Dr. Mowbray before school started. We talked about logistics of how kids were going to return, talked about how our teachers were feeling. Incidentally, every single one of them wanted to come back to school, which I thought was fantastic. So we talked about the upcoming year and plans, and I will be attending the virtual PTA meetings monthly, and we've set up another meeting. So I guess that's all for that, but I do have a question with liaison assignments. With Mrs. Evans' liaison assignments, I know I took over the CISA assignment, but I don't remember which school she was. I think Ben Franklin, but also with Dr. Cohn and Dr. Reuter. So I don't know if we need to have somebody fill in for the next month until we find another board member, or what the protocol is.
I think with regard to the school liaison, that would be less of a urgent situation. We do have a new principal there who's trying to get her feet on the ground, so.
Sure.
But certainly, having a board member kind of do double duty with regard to having information from Dr. Cohn and Dr. Reuter might be useful. So if there were a board member who'd like to volunteer to hold two roles, at least temporarily, in order for those reports to come back to the board, I think that would be beneficial. So I guess I would just ask is there a board member who'd be interested in taking that on? They're really nice gentlemen, and they're very flexible with scheduling their meetings. They're willing to meet virtually. So,
I could do that.
okay.
You will, Linda? Thank
Ms.
you.
Witkowski? All right, thank you, Ms. Witkowski.
I'll come back.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you for volunteering. Anyone else?
I guess if there's, Judy, if there's anything that Ben Franklin needs attention to, I'd be happy to
Okay, wonderful. Let's give her a couple weeks to get settled, and
It's right, I mean, it's within walking distance. so
that
it's right
that
around
would be
the
great.
corner.
Thank you.
Okay. Item D, school and community engagement reports. Any reports?
I guess I did reach out to the Countrydale principal. What do you suggest, though, in terms of under the current COVID conditions? Can we visit the school, or should we stay away, or what would you
Yeah,
suggest?
I would suggest that you have a phone conversation or a virtual meeting with the principal at this point, because we're really severely limiting visitors to the schools. So if you could do that for now, I think that would be good.
Although it would be good to see, like, what it's like to be
Mm-hmm,
inside the building.
mm-hmm.
You would say no for that? Yeah, I'd like to watch, how's the busing working, how's
Mhm.
lunch working, how's,
Mm-hmm. So any new person in the environment is subject to being a close contact or someone who could potentially introduce the virus. So we, again, are limiting that at this point, but my hope would be that we could change that in the future. So for now, please just do the phone and the virtual, and we're just really starting school, first week.
yeah, okay.
Anyone else? Okay. Moving on to item 11, school board debriefing. Any school board member comments? Okay. Hearing none. Item 12, future agenda items. Seclusion and restraint report, athletics and activities report, district administrator goals, at-risk report, Wisconsin School Board Recognition Week, annual health report, and mental health report. And item 13, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Gamble, a question with item 12.
Yes.
When, we've gotten the dates that we'll be talking about those in the past, or rough dates that we'd be talking about those in the past. Do we have those dates, or should we just assume that A through D will be next time and E through G will be in October?
Let me look that up for you.
Okay,
I
thank you.
can do that real quick. Here we go. All right, so on the 23rd of September, we have seclusion and restraint and the athletic and activities report. And on October 14th, kind of fussy, would be at-risk report, and that's when we'd like to recognize the board, and the annual health report and mental health report. Did I get them all, or am I missing?
Your goals.
Yes, my goals are always October 14th, they're in October. Because we set our goals
you.
around the coherence plan, and then I set my goals.
Great.
Thank you for clarifying that. And now item 13, adjournment. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn school board meeting.
So moved.
Mr. Alexandrovitz, a second? Mr. Wiskowski?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nays? Ayes have it. School board meeting is adjourned at 6:59 PM.